But our focus on this particular debate over the next 1 hour, viewer, is you. As a banking customer, you'll realize that you've been charged a fair amount by your bank over the last 6 months. Now, market analysts who analyze the actual bookworks that happen in the bank tell us that because banks are not growing at the rate they are used to, they're having to make up for that lack of growth by charging their existing customers more money. For example, in January this year, home loan borrowers celebrated when the RBI reduced interest rates. But that celebration did not last long when borrowers realized that the banks had no intention whatsoever to pass on that rate cut to those who were existing customers. The lower rates were being offered to new borrowers in a bid to grow the business. But old borrowers were kept at 9.5%. Now, most banks right now have all of their old borrowers between 9.5% and 10%, but they're offering new borrowers 8.3%, which is frankly unethical and unfair. To make matters worse, banks have begun charging customers for simply holding savings bank accounts. Are these charges ethical? Here's a special report.
Concerned that old borrowers were being left out in a cycle where interest rates were going down, the RBI brought in the MCLR, or Marginal Cost of Lending Rate system, starting the 1st of April 2016. The idea was to introduce a system where interest rates on loans would move in tandem with RBI action. Simply put, it meant that when RBI reduced the rate at which it lends to banks, you, the existing borrower, would also benefit from a lower interest rate. However, a lot of borrowers today have still not benefited from rate cuts. A quick look at the interest rates today shows that existing borrowers end up paying at least 1% more than new borrowers. Let's take an example. If you have a 50 lakh rupee home loan with tenure of 20 years at 8.5%, your monthly installment would amount to 43,400 rupees. The same loan at 9.5% would be 46,600 rupees. Essentially, you would save at least 38,400 rupees per year.
When you sign up for a floating rate loan, the least you expect is that it will float, and not just float upwards when interest rates go up, it should float down when interest rates go down.
So what should you do as an existing borrower? You still have the option to refinance your home loan provided you have a good credit score.
One needs to take into account the cost of shifting. The cost of shifting is the processing fee which the new loan has. That can vary bank by bank, you need to check.
If you shift to the MCLR system within your bank, you will be charged a conversion fee ranging between 5 to 10,000 rupees depending on your bank. This charge won't be applicable if you choose to change your bank altogether.
You will get a better rate in a new bank. Your existing bank won't give you their best rate. That is one. Plus, you will pay a conversion fee. In the new bank, you can get waiver of all fees, except that in some states, there is this stamp duty.
Well, experts believe that despite the high stamp duty in certain cities, the best option for you as a borrower is to switch your home loan to a new bank altogether. Also remember, switching your home loan to a new bank could also mean saving that extra 38,000 rupees per year. Amita Balachandra for Magicbricks Now.
Well, switching is one such option, but we're asking the question this evening on why banks are being simply unethical in the manner in which they're treating their customers. We've had statements come in from various banks, from HDFC, for example, Aditya Puri, who turned around and said that we are not a free service, you're going to have to pay for services. We've had cases in the past that's happening right now where HDFC Bank has sent emails to all of its customers saying, unless you reply to this email and say no, we are going to charge you 100 rupees per quarter as a service to manage your account. SBI Bank, for example, has now introduced a new minimum balance, and if you fall below that minimum balance, it charges you 100 rupees as fine that they directly reach into your bank account and take out of your pockets, functioning no better than pickpockets. Right now, that's what our banking system has been reduced to. And the RBI, that is meant to regulate this banking system, has simply all but abdicated its position as a customer protector. It has forgotten that is part of their jobs. Why are banks being unethical, and does the RBI need to step in and look carefully at these charges right now? That's the question we are asking. Harsh Roongta, is an investment advisor who joins me in the studio. So is Karthik Zaveri, the founder and director of Transcend Consulting. Also Ryan Fernandez, who is a customer who's had a tough time with banks. Swapnil Kothari, a corporate lawyer, managing partner of S. Kothari and Company. And I'm very glad to introduce Sucheta Dalal, managing editor at Moneylife Magazine, who also joins us in this conversation. Ryan Fernandez, I'm going to start with you. Tell us your story. What happened with your home loan and with your bank?
I have a home loan with a reputed bank, actually, PNB.
Yes.
And my interest rate was initially at 9.85 or 95, I'm not too sure. But when the rates came down, I had to literally go and ask the bank. You know, I think it was locked for a year, and after that I literally had to go and ask the bank, could you lower my rate? And then unless you don't ask, nothing is done. And
yes,
they further reduced it, and then again this time when the rule was RBI passed out, you know, that the rates come down further in Jan, I had to again go and ask and literally fight for a rate cut. And it was only somewhere in Feb or March that I realized that the rates were down. If you don't ask, no one tells you, you don't know. Banks just do whatever they want, you know. You got to ask for it, or someone has to tell you, hey, do you know the rates are down? And then only then can you get your rate down. So finally it has come down, but still not to what it is in the market, but it has come down a bit.
It has come down a bit, but you've had to fight for it. I want to bring in Sucheta Dalal right now. Sucheta, here's the question. The RBI is meant to regulate banks, but we've seen in the last 1 year, the RBI very feebly requesting banks to constantly bring down rates, saying, please bring down the rate, please pass it on to the customer. Shouldn't the RBI be doing more also in customer protection?
Yeah, I think the RBI is playing a very mischievous role out here, because there's no point in making these statements saying that you have to reduce your interest rate. It has to ensure that it's followed through. But on all customer related issues, the RBI has no intention of doing so. As you probably know, there is a consumer charter that it issued in 2014. And it's 2017 now. That charter has not even been implemented. But let's come to these interest rates first. This is absolutely at 100% RBI's mischief, because RBI has said that the existing rates can continue to maturity unless the customer comes and asks for it. And most people don't know. They just assume that since banks are sending you SMSs every day or 10 times a day for various things, when interest rates go down also they are going to come to them, because when interest rates go up, they just automatically increase it. And even here they fool people, because people don't know that their rates have gone up. What if they go to the bank and find out, then they'll realize that the number of EMIs that they have to pay have increased. So they don't even bother to intimate this. And this, in an era of disclosures, is just so outrageous, and I don't see how RBI can get away. But I want to make one point, you know, that this has happened under 3 RBI governors. It's got nothing to do with RBI today. It happened under rockstar Raghuram Rajan. It happened before him under Subba Rao. Nobody gives a damn about the customer.
Nobody gives a damn about the customer, and why is everybody so quiet about it? That's the question to ask. Harsh Roongta, what Sucheta said is really, really true. When the rates go up, banks barely wait a week before they translate that rate to the customer. It happens like that. And now when you call your bank, they'll actually say, you know what, you're on the base rate. If you want to move to the MCLR, we're going to charge you 6,000 rupees. We're going to charge you 8,000 rupees. They have absolutely no business charging this kind of money. And they're just running riot. They're all doing it together. There doesn't seem to be any regulator present.
I completely and totally agree. And I think I want to add to what Sucheta says. Forget about abdicating responsibility that RBI has done. If you look carefully at the regulations, they have actually added to removing protection. When the system moved from the base rate to MCLR, this is a little technical, but I'm going to say this.
Actually, so the banks, fundamentally, when we moved from base rate to MCLR, which is what the RBI did, it was against the customer, is what you're saying.
More than that, just see the fine print. What they did on the base rate, the calculations of the base rate, they had to show RBI. RBI was very careful that so if they have to show it to RBI, RBI gets oversight over it. In MCLR, they've been very careful. They've said, you don't have to show it to us. take your board's approval and keep it with you. We don't want to see it. What is that? I mean, very clearly, if something is being given to them, then they are responsible for it. That's one. Two, the issue that, say, Rayan raised. I mean, Rayan doesn't even know that he's not with a bank. The company that he borrowed from is not a bank. It's
Hence
a housing finance
not
company.
regulated by the RBI.
It's not regulated by RBI at all. But more importantly, if you look at the MCLR today, when in the base rate regime, it was allowed, if you shifted from an existing loan to the base rate regime, they were not allowed to charge any charges. The banks were not allowed. They were disallowed by RBI. When they made the regulations in MCLR, a small little line comes in that the charges can be whatever is mutually agreed between the buyer and the...
And how do they... this is the interesting... And I would bring in Swapnil here, because Swapnil is the lawyer on board. Swapnil, when the bank writes to me, and I've had people get in touch with me on Twitter, we're going to put up our phone line because the panel is fantastic today. So if you're facing a problem with your bank, call us. When HDFC Bank, and I'm making this very clear, I'm taking names, HDFC Bank sends an email to all of its customers saying, unless you scroll all the way down, find the little button and click no, I will charge you 100 rupees per quarter that I will directly deduct out of your bank account. Is that ethical? Is that legal? Are they allowed to do things like this? So basically, if I haven't read every email, it's very likely HDFC is reaching into my pocket like a pickpocket and taking out money.
Yes, I entirely agree with most of the panelists here in the sense that the banks have not been entirely ethical and neither...
Entirely ethical?
Or should I say completely unethical as far as this aspect is concerned. Well, that was a little bit of a legal lingo there.
Yes.
So completely unethical in this aspect, and also as far as you mentioned the fine print aspect where you have to literally scroll down. I would like to bring the concept, the legal concept which we have in insurance contracts and which can be translated to a trustee beneficiary situation like a doctor-patient, lawyer-client, banker-customer, which is what we call uberima fide contracts, which is of utmost good faith. Most of the insurance people who come and sell you a policy do not show you what is written in that fine print. And the courts have held it from time and again that it is a duty incumbent upon the people who put down these fine prints to bring it to the notice of that customer whom they are trying to sell a policy. So likewise, if a banker is approaching you with anything, be it a loan agreement, be it opening an account, be it trying to give a credit card application or trying to source a credit card to you, must point out the finest print to you where it's going to reach your pocket in what circumstances. And if it doesn't do that, then the customer can approach a court of law and say that, look, I have been fleeced or I have been duped.
You know, Swapnil, what these banks are relying on, they're relying on the fact that that their customers are hardworking individuals who have day jobs and are not going to go to court over 100 rupees a quarter. Now,
Correct.
Multiply 100 rupees a quarter by the number of customers these banks have and look at the kind of money they're making simply from inaction of customers. Sucheta Dalal, the comments that we have heard from management of banks, Aditya Puri saying that free ATM you want? No, we're going to charge you for the checkbook. We're going to charge you a cash handling charge. SBI's Arundhati Bhattacharya actually turning around and saying, until the RBI tells us to stop, we're going to continue making these charges. This is actually brazenly disrespectful of the customer. You're treating us like we have no voice. You're treating us like we have no choice.
Absolutely. And if you notice, this starts around November, December and Jan because they have to declare their results. And all this money that they collect from us goes straight to the bottom line with absolutely no expenses because everything is expensed out. Now, Aditya Puri says that, you know, there is a cost attached. I want to know how is it that new banks are able to give you 5% or 6% interest on savings account, and Aditya Puri, being the biggest bank around, is finding it difficult to meet costs, and the new banks are able to afford it. So what is happening is that the banks are working as a cartel, and we, the customers, are not united at all. I mean, I run an NGO, and one of the biggest difficulties that we face is that The amount is so small, it's 100 rupees. People don't want to come together. If we had 10,000 people who join in and say, I object to this, we could force the RBI to talk to us. But have you noticed that the RBI does not ever engage with the consumer? They only talk to the Indian Banks Association, which is, I allege, a cartel, and they will just not listen to the consumer anymore. And I think it's probably 3 or 4 years since the RBI has ever had a public meeting with individual customers at all.
In fact, Harsh Roongta, I'm going to go out and say this as well. The RBI has an ombudsman who is quite frankly a joke, because that ombudsman does very little for the customer.
I would not say that. I mean,
You wouldn't.
I would not say that. I would not go that far. In fact, even on charges, I have a point of view. The view is that, sure, I think charges, there are costs that increase. I'm going to speak this for a minute. There are costs that increase. They increase every time. Any service that we have, we keep paying charges.
But Harsh Roongta,
let me complete.
I'm giving you my money. I'm asking you to hold on to my money, and you are going to charge me for it?
Please let me complete.
Okay.
I think there are a set of services that the bank is giving you, for which I think as long as it clearly lays down what the charges are, and if you're willing to pay them, I think there is nothing wrong in those charges. I think the problem with the charges or with anything else is that banks in India are considered completely unfair. And because of that, what I would have otherwise paid, nobody pays willingly, but I would have otherwise paid. I am paying for other services. I would have paid for banking services. But because in all other spheres, the bank is so unfair that I find it very, very difficult to pay. Just one more thing. I think on unsolicited services, services.
I have a slightly different angle.
But just let me complete. On unsolicited services, such as managing my account, I get charged, and if I don't say no, I pay. I think charging for unsolicited services, to paraphrase what our Indian captain said, I think that crosses a line.
So see, I'll tell you where, and I'm going to go to Sucheta with this, and anybody else who wants to jump in. My problem fundamentally, Sucheta, is with the State Bank of India, which is government owned, where all employees of the State Bank of India are treated like government employees. Now, you are there to provide a service to people. You are there to provide a service to the lower middle class. You cannot turn around and make money off these people. You cannot turn around and make money off transactions. They turns around. I mean, look at the transactions that SBI charges for. From the 1st of April, SBI will permit saving bank account holders to deposit cash 3 times a month free of charge. Any more than that, and you will have to pay 50 rupees plus service tax for every transaction. In current accounts, the levy could be high as 20,000 rupees. SBI account holders will have to maintain a minimum balance, failing which they will be fined. The fine will be lower in rural areas, but not completely absent. Now, after coming out of demonetization, with what face are you going to charge people for putting their money in a bank account when you forced them by twisting their arms behind their backs to do so? I think it's completely and utterly unethical. Sucheta.
There are two things over here. I mean, let me take off from what Mr. Roongta said. It is not that we are prepared to pay for any charges as long as they say it's there upfront. I think there is, today a need for banks to tell us what are their costs and what are they paying for. Because I don't want to listen to a bank saying that core banking costs me so much because they are bad at negotiating and they pay 4 times as much to a software company for core banking. That's not on. Because if I have new banks which are able to offer me more services and a higher interest, I think there has to be some kind of parity, there has to be some structure out there, and I have to know. India has the highest spreads in the world between what they pay you in a savings account and what they're lending at. So what are they doing with that 4%? I mean, Mr. Puri said it's only 200 rupees. I think they should provide the numbers, and we need to have numbers across the board so that let us figure out what is it that they're spending on. Are they spending unnecessarily on marketing? Are they spending on something else that they needn't? And then they tell us they have no money. That is an unacceptable situation. Now, when it comes to public sector banks, we need some answers from the government, because the government launched Jan Dhan. Let's not get into Jan Dhan. Say a small company like ours, the government wants us to pay by check to everybody. Now, a company like ours has somebody like me at the top and a peon at the bottom. okay, that peon or office boy is going to withdraw 100% of his money at the end of the day. He used to prefer it in cash, so he spends it by the 30th of the month. The government wants us to pay him by check. Now, is he going to be penalized? I'm not going to be, because I may not need to go to a bank 6 times and withdraw money, but he is going to be penalized. So in the name of, helping the poor, are you going to punish them? Because who are the people who are going to pay these charges? It's going to be the lowest end, which is office boys and people like that. And the worst affected are going to be students, because all students have money. I mean, you have been a student, I've been a student. I know that none of us had 5,000 rupees in a bank account. And I think it's so scandalous to expect a student to have 5,000 rupees sitting in a bank account. That means you're not punishing the student, you're punishing the parent, while you want a separate account for the student. You can't have a system like this. And let somebody answer us. Let the RBI speak to us. Let the government speak to us.
Somebody answer us. And we should also be asking this question, Sucheta, when all of these public sector banks are being refinanced and recapitalized by the government, whose money is that? That's taxpayer money. That's my money. That's your money. That's again being plowed into these banks to make them even more inefficient. And then on top of all of that, they have the audacity to take money out of our accounts. Karthik, you have a different view. Go ahead.
I have a slightly different addition to make here. See, we in India have been used to getting free services for a very, very long time. Generally, from whenever I remember, we've never paid anything for any banking services unless we took some specific business services and
Karthik,
things like that.
Karthik, I understand what you're saying, which is the point that Harsh Roongta, absolutely. If I want someone, Harsh Roongta, if I want someone to look after my bank account, call me on a regular basis, offer me whatever is latest in the market, I get that. I want a special service. Charge me for it. But if I have money and you are holding on to that money for me, and you are using that money to conduct your business, you should be charging me and not the other way around. Now, let's talk about, if this was any other year, that what you're saying right now, Karthik Zaveri, would be valid. But post-demonetization, this is not valid.
The thing that I was trying to say, Faye, is let's not take away, the mannerism in which this is happening is not right. But if the government wants people to shift their habits, move on to digital payment mechanisms, there are better ways of doing it. And like you said, if there are specialized services, of course you charge for it. But there has to be a mannerism. Like, you scroll down all the way to the end of it and then click on a little button. All that is obviously not in good taste. But just because they have control, I completely agree that they cannot do this thing.
You know,
but at the same time, let's
I think this is a very good point, Karthik.
Methods.
Where is the competition commission in all of this? Exactly. When all of these banks follow each other. Where is the one bank who's telling me, okay, you don't want to pay HDFC 100 rupees per quarter, I will not charge you, move to me, I'm a different option. There is no option. Sucheta's right, they're functioning like a cartel. There's nowhere to go. They're all functioning exactly the same way. Swapnil Kothari, what we also need to address here very quickly is the very multicolored elephant in the room about the amount of money these banks owe to people who are not paying them back. These massive, extremely wealthy, willful defaulters who are causing NPAs. Now, you can't chase after those people. You're taking money out of those people who have 5,000 rupees in their account.
Absolutely, and this is where I would like to point out the unethical and illegal practices of the banks, because according to me, as you rightly pointed out, Faye, is that it is a cartel, and the Competition Commission of India needs to take this up immediately with the Indian Banks Association, and also I would talk about the RBI later, but first I would want to approach as far as the Indian Banks Association, that needs to take care of this cartelization, because
they Competition are the cartel.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and a Competition Act of 2002 clearly mentions that anti-cartelization, regulation of M&As, this is one of its principal jobs. So where is it? What is it doing at the moment? To help someone like Ryan, I would suggest that when you enter into any of these loan agreements or anything of that nature, you might want to just tell them to please put a small provision that kindly, please, the bank shall inform me about the floating rate as and when it takes place, because you want to use the word shall.
They send you a letter. They just don't make the change.
Okay. Let me then.
Also, actually, you know what, Swapnil, I'd like to ask you this: how often, and anyone in this panel, all of whom function in the financial services sector, how often have you seen a bank being willing to change its standard, what it calls a standard contract on loans for the benefit of the customer? If the customer turns around and says, I want you to change this clause.
It's
Never.
It never happens.
You
It's
can't
extremely
change a comma.
difficult.
You can't even change a comma.
But I would, need to be a little bit more assertive on that than accepting something which is just coming my way because I need money. I think I've got a slew of banks who are competing with each other at the end of the day. Yes, it is a cartel. I would try to push at least that one. And if you've mentioned that it is there, that there is, that particular clause that you will inform me about, then I think it's better that I then take it up with them.
Let me just point out that cartel will be...
They don't change it.
No, the cartel will be willing...
No, at least
the
inform
bank
me
in
about
competition, Swapnil Kothari, let me tell you, the bank in competition will be willing to bump up your eligibility by telling you to pay your margin or your down payment in cash. Then it will be sooner than it will be willing to actually make a change in its contract at this point. I want to bring in Sucheta. Sucheta here, to respond to what Swapnil is saying, how often can we actually get, and let's be honest, these contracts are completely one-sided. They're watertight, they're one-sided, they're against the customer, and we can never change them, Sucheta.
It's almost impossible. The only time you can do it is you can go afterwards and fight, but we know that court cases are so expensive. So, I would actually challenge him to show me one bank that is willing to negotiate the terms of the contract. Nobody did.
In fact, let me just bring in, we have our phones are ringing off the hook this evening. Vaidyanathan is on the phone line. Vaidyanathan, go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Vaidyanathan.
Yes.
I'm from Mumbai. I had taken a home loan from ICICI in 2015, which was based on I-based rate.
Okay.
Now, since it has changed now to MCLR, I had written a mail to the top management, including Chanda Kochar, the MD, and the head of Home Loan Department last week, stating that my CIBIL score is 823 out of 900, and I have been a customer of ICICI Bank since 2001. I had taken an earlier home loan, which was over in 10 years, and I had taken another home loan and all
They didn't make any changes.
No, they didn't make any changes. Their simple reply was that the borrowers of such floating rates, please note that the spread between the I-base rate and actual rate of interest, all those blah, 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 they have just given an ambiguous reply stating that you can just approach the bank branch anywhere in the home loan branch, meet the branch manager, then pay the whatever the switchover fees you want to do from I-base rate to MCLR rate, and then switch your home loan. My question is, what is the point in me having a high score of CIBIL rating, being a customer of ICICI Bank for so long, even writing to the MD that this is what my track record is? They have everything to know that this is what my track record is, and still as if they're treating you, okay, ye kidhar jayega?
What we should point out, Vaidyanathan, that when they're bumping up your rate, when they take up your rate by 1%, they don't charge you any money, they do it for free.
I think one complaint that I have about all, Mr. Vaidyanathan, for all those guys out there who are listening, sure, the regulator is not doing its job. Sure, the banks are not treating you fairly. But what stops you from shifting your loan?
How often will someone switch their loans?
Do it. Yeah. That is what I have been telling. If Mr. Vaidyanathan, you shift your loan today, you don't need to write to the MD of any bank.
I will tell you, Harsh Roongta, the bank that he is with, ICICI Bank, is charging between 6,000 rupees and 8,000 rupees as a conversion fee. 1 second, let me finish. Between the base rate and the MCLR. If he were to switch, he would have to pay processing fees. There's money out of his pocket whichever way.
Again, that is not correct. I think today, if you, for a client like Mr. Vaidyanathan with a credit rating of 823, I can assure you that he will be able to shift without any charge. It's only in states. I can give it to him. I can give it to him. That is not a problem. We can get it for you, for all good clients. The only issue is there would be states like Maharashtra where there is this stamp duty. That does complicate matters. There is this 0.2%
I'm saying Vaidyanathan shouldn't have even had to write to the MD of the bank.
I agree. But my point is, let us force what the regulator is not doing. By shifting, by taking my custom away, I can force banks to listen to me.
Fine. Sucheta, here's my question. If we follow Harsh Roongta's advice and shift, are we to shift every year, every time in a following regime?
One little point. Exactly. See, there are two things here. One is Mr. Roongta is 100% right. There's no doubt about it. Except that from the feedback that we have received, we find that banks are playing a dubious game. They're not allowing the person to shift. They're saying even if you want to shift to someone else, you'll have to pay us some 10,000, 12,000, 13,000. The different rates that different banks are charging. So while the new bank will be willing to take a borrower like Mr. Vaidyanathan because he has a great credit score, he'll be paying stamp duty, and his existing lender is also going to extract his pound of flesh. And that is where this, unfair contract comes.
It's not allowed.
And then
why don't
The banks are doing a lot of things that are not allowed. In fact,
one.
Swapnil, here's my question. Here's my question. Moving from a base rate to the MCLR was a regulatory compliance. The RBI made that change. Why should I have to pay for it as a customer? The RBI should figure out how the banks pay for that change. I shouldn't have to pay for a decision the RBI made for the banks.
You know something, Faye, I would like to point out here that what you're saying is absolutely right. The RBI has been absolutely somnolent enough here. It has abdicated its responsibility here. It's only focused on the capital adequacy. It has only focused on the risk appetite of the banks. It has only focused on the management aspect. It has not focused on the operational aspect.
And yet somehow we find ourselves in a position where the NPAs are as high as they are.
Absolutely. And just to point out, Faye, that RBI and all the other central banks of the world are members of the Bank of International Settlements. If you are a member of that body, which is a financial institution and which governs all the central banks or which directs all the central banks to do certain things, then it has got a slew of measures. It has got 29 principles of fair practices, and one of which is fairness procedure, and one of which is customer
Sucheta's laughing.
Customer. Well, she can laugh at it. She can laugh at it. I can only quote certain things. I can only cite certain things. And if, as Sucheta, you pointed out that show me one lawyer who can change the banking document. Well, there are several challenges to the lawyers that show me one lawyer who can change building documents. And there are some lawyers who've incorporated certain clauses even in documents with builders when you go enter into a redevelopment agreement.
I tell you that builders are easier to push than banks.
Than banks, absolutely. But then somewhere there has to be a start.
Builders are not cartels.
Well, in a way, I disagree with you there. They are not as apparent a cartel as the banks are.
And what I don't understand is that here's a government that's constantly talking about affordable housing, saying that we want people to buy more affordable homes. Push your regulator to push the interest rates. If the banks are sitting, and this is something we must point out, Karthik Zaveri, the RBI has been reducing rates from January last year.
True.
The banks have barely passed on all of it.
Absolutely.
And whatever they have passed on, they've passed on selectively.
Absolutely true, and which is where, what Harsh said, why don't you move? So why don't you even make the start of the process of moving? Okay. So, you don't have to actually move. You initiate the process. Right. Now, whether you do it yourself or you use an intermediary who will do it for you, as soon as you start the process, suddenly the bank wakes up and wants to talk to you. Suddenly they will, want to talk to you. They will want to discuss with you. They will call you over, and there will be all those things to do. Remember, the bank.
So the bank is a schoolyard bully.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I would advise, make a call to the bank saying you want to shift. Don't shift if you don't want to. Just make a call to the bank. Tell me how much I owe you. This is what I'm going to pay, how much I have to pay you so that I clear off the loan. Yeah. Tell me what documents you hold. This is a signal to the bank that this guy wants to shift. And if it is a customer like Mr. Vaidyanathan, whose credit score is 823, every bank has a client retention team.
Ryan Fernandez, did you try this? Did it work for you?
Yeah, there are some banks who will tell you that you got to pay some charge. You got to pay, say, 15,000, or you would not even know, like in some cases, your loan would be a fixed rate or something. Then you'll say you got to pay 9 lakhs to get out of this, or 10 lakhs. And if you're going to pay 9 lakhs there, plus pay a charge, then pay a franking charge with the new bank and all, then if you work it out, so if it works out to be 10 lakhs or something, it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's no reason why a customer needs to be paying this money. Ravi Nair is on the phone line. Ravi, go ahead.
Yeah. See, in the last 30 years of my job tenure, I have taken loan on 4 occasions. Fortunately, at the age of 50, I have already repaid it, so I'm a happy man here. I would like to know, why is it on all occasions, whenever there is a fall in the interest rate, why is it not being given to the existing customer? It's only for the new customer. Earlier, we had a floating rate, and then there was this fixed rate.
Yes,
that
yes.
dropped. And when I was in the floating rate, I used to ask them, why don't you keep me in the floating rate? It says, no, wo itna upar ho gaya hai ki abhi wo niche nahi kar sakta hai. So you're forced to go in for a fixed one. Now, when you approach them, they tell you there is something called a CRR, then there's something called a PLR, then there's something called a BPLR, and they confuse you. And the ombudsman, which one of these finance people on the panel, with due regards to them, let me tell you, the ombudsman also is equally illiterate and uneducated. I mean, it's absolutely, he's not educated. He gives you a very simple sort of a reason, saying that हम लोगों ने बैंक से उधर से लोन लिया था RBI से, तो उन्होंने हमको ये रेट में दिया, अभी हम आपको ये रेट में दे रहे हैं, तो फिर आपको वो रेट में लेना पड़ेगा. This is all absolutely confusing. The other thing is, I would tell everybody not to go in for electronic clearance, because they can cheat you, they can pick up your money at any point of time at their own convenience. And my last point here is, when the rate goes up, it is a lower middle class person who is hurt, and the person who has taken a house on and taken an EMI. His salary does not go up, so he cannot increase the EMI. You approach these banks to increase the tenure, they will dissuade you. They'll tell you not to do that. They say, "Nahi, aapko EMI bharna padega." I would like to know why this happens.
Absolutely. Why does this happen? In fact, Venu Madhav is on the phone line from Mumbai. Venu, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hello, madam. My question is that the housing sector is one sector where the banks get almost 100% EMIs paid by the people. Whereas it's a corporate like Vijay Mallya's and all who doesn't even pay also. For them, they do restructuring and all. But when it comes to a home buyer like me who has taken a loan maybe 6 months back, they really, they're apathetic. And new people, they're giving it 8%. When I go then they say all these jargons, we are a base rate, we have something else and all. But see, they are just killing the people who are giving them time-to-time payments, and they are just giving a free ride for the people like Mallya, and they're telling that, okay, I think what I feel is I feel cheated. Like, no, they're taking everything from us and giving it to those big people. That's what they
absolutely. Absolutely. In fact,
Faye, it works out like this, that since the big fishes have escaped, let's take all the money from the small fishes and try to balance our books.
And I want to point out, the percentage of people who take home loans who default, less than 2%. 98.
It's less than 1%. It's
less than 1%. 99% of the people who take home loans paid back not only fully but before time. So Cheta Dalal, this is absolutely true. The banks, the RBI, completely refusing to acknowledge the fact that they've made some big decision mistakes, that their NPAs are piling up, and they're squeezing every last drop out of the poor middle-class salaried people who have to pay tax, who have to pay their EMIs and have barely anything left on the table.
We have only ourselves to blame. The government lets us down, and banks let us down, and the regulators let us down, because we as consumers, middle-class consumers, are not united. Okay? And this is very clear. They're taking us for a ride. Dr. K.C. Chakravarti, who used to be the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, fought tooth and nail against this. Until his tenure ended, he did not allow them to charge us for the SMSs. You remember the SMS alerts that we get are for security. But the minute he retired, they introduced it. It shows you how big a cartel is IBA and banks, and how much of capture they have over both the finance ministry as well as the government, because of the huge budgets that they have for various activities that the government also does. We, the people, are not a vote bank. We, the middle class, are not a vote bank. So our issues are of zero interest to the government or to any individual politician. We have tried, we are running an NGO for 7 years. In 7 years, we can hardly get one single member of parliament to show interest in the issues that we raise. The day that all of us get together and we are a force of 100,000 people who are going to act in a certain way, they will listen to us. And I think all of us as borrowers and consumers have to become aware of this and wake up.
Absolutely. And I want to call this out for our viewers. HDFC Bank will levy 150 rupees per transaction beyond the 4 free transactions that they give you every month. New charges will apply to savings as well as salary accounts. The Axis Bank customers will be allowed 5 free transactions every month, including deposits and withdrawals. Above that, customers will be charged 95 rupees per transaction. This is the case. SBI will charge 15 rupees for SMS alerts per quarter. For debit card holders who maintain an average quarterly balance of 25,000 rupees during the 3 months, there will be no charge for UPI and USDT transactions up to 1,000 rupees. They're fleecing us, Sujay.
Yes, Faye, it's very apparent here from what I think is this kind of things is definitely asking for a PIL on the basis of arbitrariness under Article 14 of the Constitution of India, and I think this is something which is going to invite a lot of PILs. And Sucheta, as what you mentioned, I entirely agree with you on that. That the banks have the Indian Banks Association is a cartel, and if there is a force of the customers, and it's we as customers, the middle class customers, needs to get united. And there are three acts under which you can approach. And let me tell you one thing, that in as much as there is this notion that courts of law take a long time for resolution on these kind of things. If you remember that there were certain PILs against demonetization also, and they were disposed of in a second. That they were tossed, they were dismissed. Now, whether rightly or wrongly is a different issue, and that's not the subject matter of the debate here. So the point is that what I'm trying to say is that there are 3 acts. One is the Consumer Protection Act, because the banks are consumers, are deemed as consumers as per the Supreme Court judgment of 2000. In Grover versus Bank of India, if I remember the name correctly, and that's not important enough, the name. But the 2 is the Competition Act, and the 3 is the RBI Act itself.
Yes.
You can haul up the RBI under that itself, because this seems to be like saying that, okay, I'm going to say that, you banks do this, and, with the zeal with which RBI pursued the demonetization drive, I would expect that it pursues a certain amount of consumer protection drive as well.
In fact, Swapnil, I hope not with the same efficiency in which they pursued demonetization. Are you hoping that they will pursue customer
No, I'm talking of the zeal now. The efficiency, it was
efficiency
not. Because,
left a lot to be desired.
Yes, absolutely, I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that, the zeal coming from them to ensure that, till December, then suddenly you can only put 5,000 rupees. How many circulars? And, one of the most ridiculous things which, as a lawyer, as a corporate lawyer, I find is that the amount of master circulars that emanate from the RBI. Those are more confusing than convincing or clarificatory. They use the word clarificatory, but they're never clarificatory. And this is where, the lawyers have to, really the lawyers, it's us lawyers who make money. Because this is where, we have to interpret, and it's a sad thing at the end of the day. Because this is one thing which I think I would limit the RBI to issuing some master circulars per year.
The RBI should be regulated, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I want to say 2 things here, Faye. So, in the light of all of this thing happening, as consumers, we know that we don't have too much of a say, and there's not too much of anyone who's going to look at our cause. So what do you really do as a middle class consumer? One, I think against all these charges, digital. I mean, why not do that? That's one area. But the larger area I want to talk about is real estate. Very often this happens to us. A lot of times, so many people that we meet, they have taken, like the gentleman who just called a while ago, I've taken 3 loans and 4 loans. I mean, why can't you think beyond real estate? There are a lot of other asset classes also. So it's not that every time your salary goes up, the next investment that you think about is buying the next property. So I think somewhere as consumers also we need to be a little aware. Yes, the infrastructure and the government, the policy is what it is.
Karthik, you're completely, I know that you can't help yourself because you're a financial advisor. I'm a financial advisor too. But consider the fact that people need homes to live in. And in cities like Mumbai, in cities like Delhi, in cities like Bangalore, the outgo on your home, whether you're renting it or you're buying it, is more than half of what you take home every month. There needs to be a certain dignity to the people who are dealing with this money. There needs to be a certain decorum, and there needs to be a certain amount of respect with you're dealing with half of my take home. Now, who are the people who are reaching into my pocket and taking away my money? The government, who takes away 1/3 of everything I make before I even see it. Is there dignity and respect to the money that you're taking from me? No, there isn't. And then the EMIs from the banks on my home loan, which takes away half of what is left. Is there dignity to the way you're treating that money? Given how hard people have to work for this money? No, there isn't. Sucheta, you're so right about the fact that both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have repeatedly pointed out that it's such a small population of Indians who actually pay tax. which also points out to the fact that this population is so small that nobody cares about them. They're not a vote bank, which means that they're ignored during the union budget. The taxes are just piled on and on and on. Not only are they paying income tax, they're paying service tax, they're paying Swachh Bharat cess, they're paying Krishi Kalyan cess. Note also the fact that every time a bank charges you for something, there is a service tax, a Krishi Kalyan, an education cess and a Swachh Bharat cess slapped on the charge. There is no dignity to the manner in which we're treated, Sucheta. And if you want to use this platform to call out to the people who are upset to join your movement, I promise you that at Magicbricks Now, we will join your movement as well, and we will cobble together the number of people who are needed to make the RBI stand up and take notice.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Harsh?
I think I would just like to add two things to this. So first thing is that I think consumer protection movements anywhere are driven by consumers. So I think even if consumers in India expect somebody else to do the work for them, I mean literally when we move they would expect Sucheta to do the work for them. I think one of the things that they can do in their own interest at the risk of repetition.
True.
You have the power, move your money, for God's sake. That power is in your hand, it is in your interest. Move your money. I think that's one.
In fact, I'm going to...
One more other thing is that we have been promised a consumer protection regulator under the recommendations made by the Sri Krishna committee. That has been one of the promises. We have been promised that that promise will be kept. Let us hope, and I think let all of us through these mediums.
The question, Harsh, I want to ask at this point is, do we have enough faith in the RBI to ask the RBI to take consumer protection more seriously, or should we be going directly to the finance ministry and asking for a new separate regulator that looks into consumer problems of the banking sector?
That regulator has been promised across not just the banking sector. We have been promised a regulator.
No, you'll have another regulator who has too much to. Are you going to regulate insurance, mutual funds, real estate?
But
which
only for consumer protection. He's going to be only for consumer protection.
That's the consumer courts, which is completely glutted with right now with cases that it can't handle.
Yeah, Faye, here I just have a quick point to make that, I think the idea of having a separate regulator for consumer protection would not be a very, very feasible idea, simply because then I do not want wars between RBI and then and that new regulator who comes in and then open another floodgates of litigation there. I don't want that. I want that, some of its own responsibilities RBI can probably pass it on to the banks. Or if it's too flooded with too many things, then I think it needs to overstaff itself or hire more staff to do some things. So it flows under one particular act, one particular regime. I don't want two regimes then, fighting and trying to decide that who's going to have what powers. There again, then the consumer...
I'll tell you what else.
That's what I think. That's my first sort of
reaction. Not only does the RBI not respond to customers, it doesn't respond to the media. We can't ask the RBI any questions, Sucheta. We can't ask them anything. They deign to speak to us at press conferences whenever they decide, Sucheta.
Absolutely. See, there is a single regulator that the government has promised for the financial sector, okay? And this is part of the FSLRC recommendations, and the government has accepted them. So there is supposed to be a body. Now, what happens is the way the regulators behave is that nobody wants to yield turf. So if you remember, just a week before Raghuram Rajan demitted office, they came up with another mischievous and scandalous thing. They created a website called sachet.rbi.org.in. I would strongly request everyone to go there. If you click RBI over there, you can't even, it just goes to NBFCs and nothing else. If you click any other, it goes to IRDA. So here is the RBI saying, we understand that our banks are taking people for a ride on all fronts. So if it's mutual funds, they get you into an account, they're churning it. If it is insurance, they're selling you toxic ULIPs and other products which are bad for your wealth. They're selling you derivative products. So most of the mischief is emanating from the Reserve Bank of India. And all this would have been taken care of by the Consumer Charter, which they have announced, which is a meaningless statement because there is absolutely no fines, no penalties. They have not activated the Consumer Charter. So everything is on paper, and the RBI allows us to be cheated because banks are powerful and they ensure that it's kept in cold storage.
Yeah, in fact, we used to always say, do you want money, you want to rob a bank? And now we have banks that are robbing customers. It seems to be pointed in the opposite direction.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I entirely agree with you.
Sadashiva is on the phone line from Chennai. Sadashiva, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for taking this hot debate in Magicbricks. After Raghuram Rajan left India, I think system is killed. RBI is killed its own grave. They dig their own graveyard. Nobody is monitoring. The new RBI governor is West. Finance Ministry and Prime Minister are only focusing on the vote banking and UP, MP, Punjab. But they are not focusing on what is happening. I think this was taken a good point. RBI is not at all working. And banks will, if RBI is not taking care, banks will not at all focus on the end customer. As Suchita said, we have to take consumer protection, whatever said and done, but banks will not respond. Like we need one more Raghurajam here, and Modi should see what should happen in RBI.
Sucheta,
I think Sucheta herself mentioned.
Exactly.
Sucheta,
I don't think it makes any difference who's the governor.
Sucheta, before you answer that, just one quick point, whenever I look at all these acts, I was going through all these acts today before I came on the show, the RBI Act, the NBFC Act, and all the other corporate acts I was looking at, I have found that there is nothing that a consumer can do under those acts. There is nothing. So which is what then I have to just rely on the Contract Act, and then I have to rely on the Consumer Protection Act, where the consumer, with due respect to the commissions out there, but they take a long time.
I want to point this out, Swapnil. We had the Competition Commission that pointed out that developers were forcing customers to sign one-sided contracts. DLF got pulled up in Delhi. Where is this Competition Commission in the matter of home loans, in the matter of banks? Sucheta, has the Competition Commission stepped in at all? Have they looked at these contracts? Have they decided at all that this is unfair to customers? Why has there been no attention in this area?
No, Faith, they don't do these things unilaterally. Somebody has to complain. So maybe we have to take it up. But unless we file a complaint, back it up with documents. So in fact, when we've written about home loans and what is happening, we have put a little survey under Survey Monkey under it, and we are gathering information. When we collect at least 1,000 complaints, because if we're talking about a problem that affects millions of people, we should at least have 1,000 concrete complaints. So I keep coming back to it. Consumers need to respond. If they don't write to us, they don't write to the government. And frankly, I think it's unfair that we need to go to the Competition Commission. We as an NGO maybe, but I don't think individuals should have to go there. The banking ombudsman is supposed to function. But the banking ombudsman in the last 3-4 years has become almost non-functional. They're looking at whether you checked something or not, because I wrote about the case of a person called Mr. Savla, and he has actually gone to the ombudsman. They said, we've spoken to HDFC Bank. HDFC Bank says that they have informed you, which is a lie. They don't have to produce any proof, and they say complaint dismissed. End of story. Now, if this is how the banking ombudsman behaves, what is the customer supposed to do?
Absolutely.
It's unfair to say, okay, go to the ombudsman, you lose over there, go to a consumer court, you lose over there, go to the Competition Commission. I mean, you have a life, you're doing a job, and you also have a loan to pay back. Where is the time to do all this fighting?
And the fact that every time you even write to the bank or you call and Ryan will second this, when you call the bank, they'll say, visit a branch. I have a job, I have a life, I can't visit the branch. But when they want to do things that are the one-sided in their favor, they will do it without even any, without even signing a document.
An insurance policy,
they'll come home.
They'll come home.
For everything, they'll come to your house. But if it's something with them, you got to run to them and beg them.
Just one point very quickly. The Competition Commission, Sucheta, I just need to clarify a little bit there that Competition Commission does have the power, plenary powers to do certain things suo motu if it wishes to, but I think I would rather appreciate
it. Really?
Well, that's a secondary issue, but it doesn't do it. That's the point. So the thing is that I'm just clarifying on that it's got powers to do it, but it doesn't do it. So I think I would rather prefer that 100,000 customers or whatever, or 10 NGOs together go approach them.
So Swapnil, I have this question to ask you as well. Also, this would come under the purview of the consumer court. Because at the end of the day, we are customers of these banks, which means we can approach the consumer courts. What is the state of the consumer courts right now in India?
Well, they are completely flooded with a lot of litigation, and one of the biggest deficiencies of the commissions is where I feel is that they are not all lawyers, the people who decide this. So I think they would lack quite a bit of legal knowledge, which is very imperative for this kind of a thing. So, where you have the iberima fide contracts, etc. These are certain legal concepts which are absent in the people. Not that they would be, but that is a handicap which it functions from, as opposed to the courts of law where you go to a city civil court or a Bombay High Court, where all of us are lawyers, of course, and the judges are all lawyers. So, the Contract Act is embedded into their heads. And this is, you can approach if I've been fleeced and pickpocketed, then I can approach a city civil court or a Bombay High Court, depending upon how much money I have been, because there is a pecuniary jurisdiction aspect, which I don't want to go into details right now. But look, I have been fleeced. And apply for restitution, for the money that I have lost. So there, I am happy that I will approach it under the Contract Act, and no bank can say that, look, it was an NBFC which took the loan from me, because then the bank is an agent of that NBFC, and on the principles of agency, an agent is liable for the acts of the principal, and vice versa.
Okay, you know what, I am running out of time, and I'm going to ask for advice from everybody on this panel. I am personally, we took a long time to put this panel together. We've been working on it for a while. And we're working, I personally am going to take this very, very seriously. So we're going to come back, and this is a commitment I'm making on the channel to the viewers who are calling in right now as we speak. We're going to address this problem once every fortnight. We will keep coming back to it, and I will ask everyone, especially Sucheta, if they can give us this 1 hour every 15 days to address this problem. So if we can get enough attention to it, if we can get the RBI listening, if we can get the banks to start responding, and we are going to, my message to the banks is, I am going to put all of this information up on the screen for your customers to see. So if you believe right now that your customers are not reading their emails and they're not going to find out what you're charging, I'm going to put it up on national television with the name of the bank and what you're charging your customers, and your customers will know over the next 15 to 20 days what every bank is charging, and they will find out, and they will pick up the phone and they will call you. So be prepared for a phone call, dear private and public banks, from every single one of your customers, because we're going to try and reach out to every one of them. I have to wrap up this conversation right now, but I want to thank our panel for being so amazing and giving us their time, and we're going to ask them to keep coming back on a regular basis. To our viewers who are watching, if you feel cheated, it's probably because you are cheated, and you should get in touch with us. We're going to put together enough people to get the RBI to take us more seriously, because quite frankly, and I'll say it again, the RBI has not done its job. Part of the RBI's job, other than demonetization, is to protect the customer of the banking sector, and the RBI has not done its job. If this was time for the RBI's annual review, it would score 0 on this particular category. We're going to make sure that it does better. Thanks for watching.